You need to know the name Alfred Kinsey. Kinsey is viewed as a modern-day hero. The history of sex in America falls into two large, unequal, yet clearly defined periods. Scott McLemee wrote these words in a 1997 article in Salon, anticipating the 50th anniversary of the publication of Kinsey's premier work. The first era belonged to the Puritans, the Victorians. This epoch of libidinal prohibition lasted until January 4th, 1948. The following day, Professor Alfred C. Kinsey of Indiana published Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, whereupon, as the expression has it, the earth moved. He changed the world in 1948 with the publication of this book. It became the standard, and it influences and impacts us to this very day. When you hear people talk about born this way, that's Kinsey's influence. That is a very modern, unique, avant-garde way of thinking about things. Because before Kinsey, before we all lost our ever-loving minds, everybody knew that children weren't sexual beings. So how can you have known that you were homosexual since you were a child, if as a child you were not a sexual being? The answer is you couldn't. By the way, there's a monument to this man at Indiana University. Listen to this. Michael Jones writes this about a moment in 1981 when Judith Reisman, and if you don't know that name, you need to know that name, confronted this world. He writes, on July 23rd, 1981, Reisman delivered a paper entitled, "The Scientist as a Contributing Agent to Child Sexual Abuse, a Preliminary Study," in which Reisman brought up for the first time in the 32 years since it had been published, the material on child sexuality in tables 30 through 34 of Kinsey's male volume, because he wrote another one, a female volume, and wondered how this data could have been obtained without involvement in criminal activity. Before giving her report, Reisman had written to male volume co-author Paul Gebhardt to ask about the data in tables 30 through 34. Gebhardt wrote back saying that the data had been obtained from parents, school teachers, and some male homosexuals, including some of Kinsey's men, who had used manual and oral techniques to catalog the number of orgasms they said they could stimulate in infants and children. Tables 30 through 34 are on his research on pre-adolescent orgasm. And some of his subjects were as young as 4 months old. That's Alfred Kinsey. Who abused somewhere between 350 and 2,000 infants and children for his research. His fraudulent research, by the way, that we now know was not only fraudulent research, but it was child abuse. Virtually the entire sex industry, sex research establishment worldwide was in the audience at the meeting in Jerusalem. But the reaction to the talk was silence, stunned or sullen or otherwise, until a Swedish reporter wondered out loud why the assembled experts had nothing to say. The reason they had nothing to say is because all of their work and all of their research was based on Kinsey's work, and most of them were his proteges. So the modern landscape, in terms of what we think about sexuality, is rooted in the work of this man. So when you hear people talk about born this way, when you hear people talk about, all my life, ever since I was a child, that's Kinsey. By the way, what are the implications of this? I'm glad you asked. People have been wondering out loud, why is it that they're trying to push sex ed further and further down the chain? Why is it that, it's not just, older children, high school age children who've gone through, puberty and adolescence? Why is it that we have to do this earlier? Why is it that we have to do this with elementary school children? Why is it so controversial? When the governor of the great state of Florida says, not here. You need to understand that the reason that people argue for this and the reason that they get upset when people don't want to allow this to happen is because they have a Kinseyan view of human sexuality, and they believe that these babies are sexual creatures and that we need to acknowledge that and treat them as such. Another movement that is rooted in this is the movement that wants to lower or remove age of consent laws. Because the reasoning goes, if children are sexual beings from birth, then it is oppressive not to allow them to express that with one another or intergenerationally. That's Alfred Kinsey. And by the way, did I say there's a monument? I believe I did. A monument to him at Indiana University. Ephesians chapter 1. Therefore be imitators of God as beloved children. Walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. But sexual immorality and all impurity and covetousness must not even be named among you, as is proper among saints. Let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving. For you may be sure of this, that everyone who is sexually immoral or impure, or who is covetous, that is an idolater, has no inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not become partakers with them. For at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true. And try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness. And here's the key. But instead expose them. That's my goal here. For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. There's an irony. It seems like a contradiction, right? It would seem like, the text is saying here, don't talk about that stuff. The question is, how do you expose the stuff if you don't talk about this stuff? Look at it again, though. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness. Okay, don't participate in them, but instead expose them, expose them, expose them, expose them. Why is it important to expose them? It's important to expose them because it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. These things are shameful, so expose them. When anything is exposed to the light or by the light, it becomes visible. For everything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, "Awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you."